If you believe in the 7 universal laws, it's because no one has told you what Thoth really taught yet. And what if I told you that what you've learned so far is just a fragment, a distorted piece of something much greater, hidden for millennia? You didn't come across this video by accident. When the soul is ready, the revelation appears. And maybe, right now, you're starting to feel that something has never quite made complete sense. The law of attraction works, but not always. The law of correspondence explains, but doesn't solve. Why? Because all these laws, all of them, are loose pieces of a single force. And Thoth never talked about 7. He revealed only 1. The one law that governs absolutely everything. But few are ready to hear this, because this law can't be learned with the mind. It needs to be remembered. Stay with me until the end, because when you understand, nothing in your life will stay the same. Man is a star bound to a body. Free your light, and you shall be the all. How many truths have you accepted without ever questioning them? How many times have you heard something said with such conviction that you just believed it? Maybe you've heard there are 7 universal laws that govern everything, and that sounds deep, doesn't it? 7 is a symbolic number, sacred in many traditions. It gives a sense of order, of completeness, as if the universe were a perfect equation. But stop and think. Do you really know where that idea came from? Who said there are 7? Who defined these laws, and why did you believe them as an absolute truth? Most people never ask themselves that question, because repeating is easier than investigating. Repeating what's already laid out feels safer than risking a look into the void and finding out that maybe what you thought was the whole is just a part. And that's exactly what happened with the so-called system of the 7 universal laws. They were amplified, spread, celebrated, turned into modern spiritual mantras. But what no one told you is that these laws, as they're known today, didn't come directly from Thoth. They're not inscribed in the Emerald Tablet. They weren't found in Egyptian temples, nor recorded by sacred scribes of the ancient world. The truth is that the 7 laws you've heard so much about appeared centuries later, in a book called the Kybalion. A mysterious text attributed to 3 anonymous initiates, published in the United States in 1908. It's a work inspired by Hermetic philosophy. Yes, it has value. It holds wisdom. But it's a modern reconstruction, not a literal translation of what Thoth taught. It's a Western attempt to organize the invisible into understandable structures. And like every attempt to translate the sacred using the logic of the rational mind, it has its limitations. The Kybalion is legitimate in what it sets out to do. It offers a bridge, a starting point. But it's not the end of the path, and it shouldn't be treated as if it were the original source. Because when you turn spiritual principles into fixed formulas, you risk reducing the infinite to a mental framework. And that's exactly what happened. By trying to organize the mysteries of the universe into 7 basic rules, we lost sight of what lies beyond structure. We lost contact with the essence. Thoth, the scribe of the gods, never spoke of 7 laws. His teachings were delivered in symbols, metaphors, vibrations. He didn't say, reality is governed by 7 principles. He said, all is one. He didn't talk about effort to manifest. He spoke of remembering who you are. Because for Thoth, knowledge wasn't a manual. It was a process of returning to the origin. A process of unveiling what has always been present, but was forgotten. The problem isn't in knowing the 7 laws. The problem is in believing they're everything, in thinking you've understood it all because you memorized 7 phrases. That's a subtle trick of the spiritual ego. It loves the feeling of mastering the invisible. But true knowledge doesn't happen through the mind. It happens when something vibrates inside you and breaks the illusion. When you stop repeating formulas and start feeling the truth without words. Of course, the 7 laws have value. They work like a map. But if you confuse the map with the territory, you'll never leave the same place. And that's why so many people study spiritual laws and still feel empty, because they're looking at the effects, not the cause. They're stuck in multiplicity, when the real call has always been for unity. Thoth never wrote the Kybalion, and what he did leave behind says something much simpler and much deeper. But the human mind has a huge problem with simplicity. It doesn't trust essence. It needs structure, categories, formulas, because it feels safe within systems it can understand, control, explain. That's why, over the centuries, spirituality was sliced up, turned into doctrine, ritual, steps, hierarchies, quantities. Instead of seeking the living truth, we were taught to seek structures that seemed true. And so, we started piling up laws, techniques, concepts. Law of vibration, law of polarity, law of correspondence, 7 universal laws, then 13 more, and more recently, 21 spiritual laws. And the more they multiplied, the further they drifted from the origin. And no one realized that the excess of information was covering up exactly what was meant to be revealed, the unity behind everything. In ancient Hermeticism, the word nomos, law, wasn't used as a code of conduct, but as an expression of the natural rhythm of things. The true law wasn't imposed, it was perceived. The flowing water, the growing seed, the silence that heals. Everything already followed a principle, a flow, and it didn't need to be named. Thoth, in the oldest Egyptian texts, never said there were 7 laws. What he left behind were vibrational keys, metaphysical inscriptions that pointed to something beyond language. A consciousness that didn't need explanation because it revealed itself through presence. But modern man doesn't want presence. He wants control. That's why he turned principles into dogmas, maps into manuals. And so, the laws became golden cages, shiny, organized, beautiful, but still cages. Because instead of liberating, they started to limit. It's like standing in front of a massive and complex tapestry, and instead of admiring the full picture, we start studying each thread separately, forgetting they all come from the same point of origin. The mind got enchanted by the details, the parts, and lost sight of the whole. Multiplicity, in that sense, is a tool. It serves to introduce, to teach, to open doors. But when we cling to it as if it were the ultimate truth, we fall into the trap of the spiritual ego, the one that needs to accumulate, catalogue, feel superior for knowing more. And knowledge becomes a burden. Wisdom gets diluted in form. It's like the alphabet. It's there to form words. But if you stop at each letter thinking that's where the secret is, you'll never understand the message. Spiritual laws are letters. The essence is the living language that expresses through them, and it can only be understood when you let go of the attachment to the parts and surrender to the vibration that connects everything. And that's why so many still feel empty, even after reading dozens of spiritual books, studying birth charts, learning numerology, mantras, sacred codes. Because it's possible to know a lot and remember nothing. It's possible to gather tons of information and still be disconnected from inner truth. The soul doesn't seek quantity. It's not interested in formulas. It wants the center. It wants what's real. And anything that presents itself as a law needs to be tested in the fire of experience. If it doesn't transform you, if it doesn't lead you back to yourself, then it's just another conceptual ornament, another brick in the mental wall that separates you from the all. The original Hermeticism, the true one, spoke of returning to the one. The one can't be explained, only experienced. It doesn't divide, it doesn't fragment, it doesn't get categorized. Everything we call laws are just partial manifestations of that one force. They are the trails of the wind, not the wind. the reflections of the light, not the source. And as long as you stay stuck in the reflections, you won't see the sun. Everything you know as separate, vibration, polarity, correspondence, are just reflections of a single invisible matrix. The true law is still hidden. The one law that governs all things. And it's hidden because it can't be taught with words. It can only be revealed when the mind goes quiet and consciousness recognizes itself as what it has always been. This law isn't a concept. It's not a theory. It's not a belief you need to accept. It's a reality you're already living, but haven't realized yet. Before any principle, there was only being. Not being, as in identity, name, profession, or social role, but being as pure consciousness, being as presence that comes before thought, being as the point of origin of all forms, before any duality, before time, before space, even before the idea of laws. This is the one law that governs all things, being. It doesn't matter if you call it God, universe, source, supreme consciousness, or I am. All those names point to the same thing, a state of wholeness where there is no separation between observer and observed, a field of unity where everything is an expression of one single existential vibration. That vibration can't be divided because it's in everything. It is everything. This law isn't written in books. It's engraved in your silence. It's pulsing right now in your chest, in the space between one thought and another, in that moment when you're not thinking, but just are. And if you've ever felt that, in nature, in a moment of total presence, in a deep gaze, in a sudden insight, you touched this law. You experienced being. The law of being doesn't need to be explained. It reveals itself when you stop trying to understand it, because it doesn't speak to the mind. It speaks to the totality of your field. It shows up as a knowing without words, a memory that didn't come from outside, a reunion with what you never stopped being, just forgot. This is the key the true masters have always kept, not because they wanted to hide it, but because they knew no one can hand being to someone else. It can only be discovered from within. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Buddha said, "Look within. You are the Buddha." Socrates said, "Know thyself." And Thoth? Thoth got straight to the point. Know thyself, and you will know the gods and the universe. Because when you know your true self, not the ego, not the mask, but the silent self that observes everything, you reconnect with the source. And from there, everything changes. Not because the outside world changes, but because you change the center from which you perceive reality. And when perception changes, everything changes with it. This law isn't a rule. It doesn't demand obedience. It just is. And everything that exists flows from it. Matter is an expression of being. Vibration is the movement of being. Time is being playing a game with itself. Life is being experiencing itself in form. And suffering arises when we forget that, when we try to live as if we were loose fragments, separate, disconnected from the origin. The true law is simple. I am. And because of that, all is. That's the starting point and the final point. It's the origin of everything true, lasting, and sacred. All other laws, all manifestations, all paths are temporary branches of this eternal principle. But if the truth is so simple, so essential, so present, why did we lose it? Why did it get buried under so many layers? Why do we keep creating fragmentation, dogmas, systems, structures? Why did we turn being into concepts and freedom into religion? Why was this hidden? And why do we keep creating fragmentation and multiple laws to this day? Because being in its infinity, chose to forget in order to rediscover itself. The truth is, forgetting wasn't a mistake. It was a sacred choice, a cosmic choice. Consciousness didn't fall from unity like someone who tripped. It projected itself into the experience of separation in order to see itself from the outside, to feel what it's like to return home. And for that, it had to fragment. The fragmentation wasn't punishment, it was divine methodology. Imagine a drop diving into the ocean of form. It plunges into bodies, into time, into parallel realities. It dresses itself in personality, culture, beliefs, fears, stories, and with each one of these layers, it drifts, not from the source, because that's impossible, but from the memory of the source. It forgets what it is until it believes it's just the role it plays. That's why consciousness incarnates, not just in one body, but in many, in levels, in frequencies, in dimensions. Every body we inhabit is a lens. Each lens shows a part of the whole. And when we only look through one lens, we believe the whole is just that part. And that's how the illusion of separation is born. That's how we get lost, living as if we were a piece, a name, a profession, a story, an ego, when in reality, we are the space where all those things happen, being placed itself inside the labyrinths to learn how to recognize itself in every alley, every wall, every mirror. That's the mechanism of the great game of life, to forget in order to remember, consciously. Because remembering without forgetting doesn't bring evolution. Only the contrast between absence and presence makes the light shine brighter. It's in the dark that a candle becomes a lighthouse. It's in the heaviness that the soul discovers its lightness. And it was all designed that way. The veils, the bodies, the laws, the many names of God. All of it is part of the disguise. Not because the universe wants to fool you, but because awakening is only possible when you choose to remember. When in the middle of the confusion, that spark shows up. When everything falls apart out there and something awakens in here. That's why true spirituality isn't just a concept. It's a process of reintegration, a gradual return from the fragment to the whole, from identifying with the separate self to fully living the one being. But what happens when you live only through fragmentation and forget who you are completely? The vibrational prison created by illusion. When that happens, what sets in is a prison that has no walls, no bars, no guards, an invisible prison, but a real one, a vibrational prison. And the most dangerous thing about this kind of prison is that the person inside doesn't even realize they're trapped. They think they're free because they can choose a career, buy a phone, move to a new city. But inside, they keep spinning in the same place. This prison is made of identification. You start believing that you're just this body, that you're the image you see in the mirror, that you're the name someone gave you, the story you've lived, the pain you've carried. And the more you believe that, the more your vibration contracts. The more you define yourself through labels, the more you limit yourself. And little by little, without even realizing it, you stop living in what you are and start living in what you believe yourself to be. You believe you're small and act small. You believe you can't and stop trying. You believe you always have to fight and you live at war with yourself. That's reverse effort. The more you try to escape the prison, the more stuck you become in it. Because you're trying with the mind, with the ego, with fear. And the mind only knows how to repeat what it already knows. That's why so many people are tired, exhausted, because they keep searching for a freedom they'll never find out there. They keep trying to control everything, understand everything, plan everything, as if salvation is in the next method, the next book, the next technique. But all of that is still inside the same cell. Just prettier bars, that's all. Suffering shows up when you move away from the one law, when you forget that you already are what you're looking for, when you believe you need to earn something that's already your nature, and then you start living outward, competing, comparing, trying to prove your worth, shaping yourself to fit in, losing yourself just to be accepted, all because you forgot where you came from. That disconnection creates distortion. You start looking for meaning in things that have no soul. You get stuck in stories that make you feel guilt, shame, fear. And that low vibration keeps attracting more of the same. More situations that reinforce what you already believed. More pain that validates the lie they told you about who you are. The world, in that state, becomes a reflection of forgetting. And everything feels hard, limited, threatening. People seem distant. Time feels scarce. Life feels like a battlefield. But what you're seeing isn't reality. It's the filter of your vibration, the lens of your disconnection. You're not living what is. You're living what you believe yourself to be. And as long as that belief is ruled by fear, scarcity, and separation, you'll stay trapped inside that energy bubble, reacting to the world, trying to survive, repeating cycles. But this prison isn't permanent. It only continues to exist as long as you're unconscious of it. Because there is a way back, and it doesn't come through effort or spiritual struggle. It comes through presence. Because when you become truly present, something subtle begins to reorganize, not outside, but inside. It's like the pieces start falling back into place, like a forgotten frequency starts vibrating again in the center of your chest. It feels like a return, but not to a physical place. A return to yourself, to the whole body. You're not just this body you see, not even this face you were taught to identify as you. That's just the surface of a much larger structure, way more complex and infinitely more intelligent. Your physical body is the outermost layer, the densest one, the one that makes it possible to experience life on Earth. But behind it, there are other bodies, other layers, other frequencies, and they're all connected by the same point of origin, the whole body. This body isn't visible. It's not made of flesh or thought. It's made of presence. It's the field where all your other bodies organize themselves. The physical, the mental, the emotional, the energetic, and the spiritual. All of them are different expressions of a single consciousness core. And that core is what keeps you alive. It's what vibrates even before you think. It's what feels before you can name what you feel. The problem is, we were taught to live cut off, to function in parts, to take care of the physical body as if it's separate from the emotional, to try to understand the mind like it's not connected to the subtle field. But there is no separation. Everything vibrates together. Everything communicates. Everything is one single organism, and that's why everything you do here echoes across all planes. A destructive thought affects the physical body. A repressed emotion blocks the energy field. An unhealed trauma clogs spiritual flow. Nothing is isolated. Because you're not a piece. You are the entire field. When you breathe consciously, you're not just oxygenating your lungs. You're feeding your entire field. When you speak a word full of truth, you're not just communicating. You're shaping frequencies in the field around you. When you choose to be silent, you're not just holding your tongue. You're reorganizing the very vibration of existence inside you. Returning to the whole body is stopping living in fragments. It's recognizing that you are a unified field, that your real vibration doesn't come from your restless mind or your tired body, but from that subtle layer that observes everything. The one that never sleeps, never gets sick, never doubts. It was just forgotten, waiting for you to come back. And when you come back to inhabit the whole body, something starts to happen in your vibrational field. But it's not something that comes from the outside. It's not some mysterious force that shows up to give you what you asked for. It's you who starts to emit a vibration so aligned with your origin that reality inevitably begins to shape itself around that. Not because you're trying to manipulate life, but because finally, you're being who you are. This is the shift that few people understand. You're not here to attract. You're here to be. The law of being doesn't work like a magnet. It doesn't need to attract anything because it already contains everything. There is no separation between you and what you desire. What exists is distance between who you truly are and who you're being. And that distance is what we call suffering, scarcity, anguish. When you return to inhabiting the whole body, you begin to live from the center. And from the center, you don't attract things, you project them. Your essential vibration stops being an attempt to get something and becomes a frequency so pure, so whole, that the universe has no choice. It responds. It reflects. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. And that's why so many people get frustrated trying to apply the so-called law of attraction. Because the focus is on wanting, on asking, on desiring. But wanting comes from lack. Asking comes from separation. True manifestation happens when there is no more searching. When your field already is the answer. When you no longer need to convince the universe to give you something, because you already recognize that you are the universe expressing itself. You don't ask the universe. You activate the universe by remembering that you are it. That's the secret the ancients tried to pass on through symbols, myths, and silence. The I am of Moses. The kingdom of heaven is within you from Jesus. The Tattvam Asi of the Vedas. The as within, so without from Hermes. All point to the same principle. Reality doesn't happen to you, it happens from you. Being is the origin of vibration, and vibration is the origin of form. So if your vibration is out of alignment with your essence, your reality will always be a distortion, a fragmented reflection. But when you return to your axis, when you vibrate from the truth that lives in your center, manifestation becomes inevitable. There's no more effort, no more control. There's flow, there's recognition. You don't lose yourself trying to make the universe work. You realize you're already part of it, and it works through you. But how do you live that in everyday life? How do you embody the law of being in practical life? The law of being and the awakening of divine power. The answer isn't in doing more, but in letting go. Returning to the self isn't about effort, it's about surrender. And that's why it's so challenging for the mind. Because the mind was trained to control, measure, calculate, execute. It doesn't know how to rest. It doesn't understand what it means to just be. But that's exactly where true alignment begins. The first step is silence. Not outer silence, but inner, conscious silence. The ability to go quiet inside and simply observe. Not react, not judge, just observe. When you quiet yourself internally, your soul's frequency starts to rise. Because it was always there, just covered up by the constant noise of your thoughts. Thoth spoke about the importance of silence as a form of vibrational purification, because in silence, you hear what the soul already knows. It's in silence that the mind bows to the mystery, and that cleanses, reorganizes, reintegrates. The second practice is intention. Pure, aligned, direct intention. Intention isn't an egoic desire. It's a vibrational command that comes from the core of your being. Before taking any action, align your intention with your inner truth. When you do that, every gesture becomes a ritual. Every choice becomes a silent decree to the universe. That's purification through intention. Then comes radical self-observation, the inner awareness that doesn't judge but brings light. Observe your impulses, your reactions, your habits, not as enemies, but as portals to understand where you're still operating on autopilot. Observe without identifying. See thoughts passing, emotions rising, patterns repeating. And just notice. That gives you back your power. Because when you observe, you step outside the program. And the one who observes is already free. Finally, the verb. The spoken, thought, or written word carries a frequency. When you say something, you vibrate it into your field. That's why using words with awareness is one of the most powerful tools that exists. Speak what is true. Declare what you want to live. Feed your reality with words that support your expansion. Language is vibrational magic, and you are the magician. None of this requires effort, only remembrance. You don't need to become anything. You just need to stop forgetting. You already are. And that already are starts to change everything. And when you remember, the whole world changes without you having to move a leaf. Because when you live from the self, reality stops being a series of obstacles to overcome and becomes a fertile field that responds to your deepest vibration. It's like everything around you starts to cooperate. Not because you forced it, but because you aligned. The universe doesn't resist someone who is whole. In this state, there's no more separation between desire and fulfillment, because desire is no longer a lack. It becomes a natural expression of your essence. There's no more distance between intention and manifestation, no more effort, no more seeking. There is presence. And in presence, everything is revealed. Your divine power was never something to be achieved. It's always been there. But it only activates when you leave behind the illusion of struggle and step into the state of remembrance. Remembrance of who you are. Remembrance of what you carry. Remembrance that the source was never far away. You had just drifted from yourself. This is the law of being. Not a law to be studied, but lived. A frequency that pulses in the center of your field, and when accessed, completely transforms the way you exist in the world. You stop waiting and start creating. You stop reacting and start radiating. And if this video found its way to you now, it wasn't by chance. It's because you're ready. Ready to stop searching and start remembering. Ready to let go of the layers that pulled you away from your essence. Ready to activate what is already yours by nature. You didn't find this video. It found you. Because it's time to remember. And if this message touched something in you, and you feel that more people need access to this kind of awakening, know that there's a direct way to support the channel. In the first pinned comment, you'll find a way to contribute and help spread content like this across the world. Every bit of help is a seed that plants consciousness, and the universe, trust me, gives it back. But don't leave just yet. A video has been picked for you to continue your journey of knowledge and wisdom. Just click on the screen.